It is an alert day. I have seen warnings that have come across that I don't often see in my career. One of those is a flash flood emergency, catastrophic damage expected. And
the farther north you go, we are in Hamptonville right now, and the farther west you go, the situation gets worse and worse. Watauga County's Emergency Services Director says they are arms deep in the recovery phase right now. He could not tell me number of injuries or number of buildings that have been damaged. He did, however, as you mentioned, use the word catastrophic. Have you ever seen it as bad as what we've seen today?
No, I have not. This is the worst I've seen it.
Incredible images from on and around the campus of Appalachian State University in Boone, all thanks to Helene. The situation described as catastrophic by Watauga County's Emergency Services Director, with some areas seeing record flooding and damage.
The next closest storms we've had were Ivan, Charlie, and Hugo. Ivan and Charlie didn't come close. Hugo did, but this is much worse than Hugo because the damage is much more widespread and the rainfall much more widespread over the county.
A few miles away from campus, just off 421, Brookshire Park turned practically into Brookshire Lake thanks to the raging New River nearby. The water was so powerful, it picked up and set down dumpsters.
From Charleston, so it's rare to see hurricane band winds and rain this far inland.
Mobile alerts like this one warning of flash flood emergencies and life-threatening situations, keeping everyone on edge and wondering when the water would recede. Many people throughout the county without power and communication infrastructure severely damaged as well.
I'm a little bit stressed, worried about, members of my community, everybody staying safe and being able to get where they need to be. And just making sure everybody's got food, water, all that.
We're just going to have to come together as a community, and that's what Boone's always been very good at doing.
In a text message I heard from one of the people we interviewed in this story tonight, he told me there is essentially no internet in Boone right now. There is also a boil water advisory in effect and a low water pressure advisory as well. Emergency response officials tell WXII their top priority right now is restoring and making emergency repairs to critical roads. Many, many days, if not weeks, before Boone and Watauga County go back to the way they looked prior to today. Live tonight in Hamptonville, Kenny Beck, WXII 12 News.
Emily Russell says she's thankful to be alive after floodwaters left her stranded in her childhood home for hours with no way of knowing if help was on the way.
I mean, I really thought I was just going to, drown in my own house.
Emily Russell says she was home alone early Friday morning when she found herself surrounded by water.
I mean, it was literally like you were stuck on an island, and I just didn't know what to do. There was no leaving the house at that point.
Russell says she watched from her window as cars and RVs floated by. Then she heard part of the house collapse.
When you start hearing that, it's almost like a movie. And then the front door, the water pushed it in, and it pushed in the back door, and within 30 seconds, it went from the ground to neck level.
Russell says she and her dog floated on a mattress in her home for nearly 8 hours, hoping to be rescued.
It's like you go from this scariest feeling in place to almost peaceful, because it was like you were already so scared, and your body's getting cold from being in the water, and you're getting sore from just shaking from being in the water, and it's just like your body almost goes numb. And
it wasn't until 6 in the evening when Russell's husband David was able to reach her.
And the minute I seen him, I thought this is my only chance to get out, and so me and the dog took off down the front yard. But the currents were so strong that I only made it maybe 10 feet, and I had to yell to them like I can't walk anymore, or it's going to take me.
Russell considers herself lucky she made it out. She knows others weren't so fortunate. Russell says she doesn't know whether she or her husband have jobs to go to, and with the baby just weeks away, she doesn't know what they're going to do. In Swannanoa, I'm Chris Peterson. Cindy Blackstone is picking up the pieces.
It's a mess in there. There's not a lot you can salvage.
Blackstone stood on the front porch of her sister's house across the street and watched as her car and her neighbor's trailer floated away.
I was grateful because I knew that there was nobody in the trailers that went away. I knew that there was nobody in the cars that were floating away. So I knew that people were okay. and that's important. It got even higher in the garage.
The mud on the walls shows how high Mill Creek rose inside Blackstone's home. She says there are moments when it becomes overwhelming.
I broke down a bit yesterday when I went in there and it finally hit me, but I'm trying to keep my head in a good place so I don't want to, it's just stuff.
In the middle of all the debris, Blackstone finds a blessing. A chest full of precious memories survived the storm.
Nothing's wet inside, and it's not a sealed thing, but it's all dry.
Blackstone says her home is unlivable, and she's preparing to start life with a clean slate.
With all the bad, there's good. You just, you take lemons and make lemonade, because it's better than crying, right?
Blackstone says through it all, she knows God has a plan.
He's going to bring us through this, all of us. He'll bring us all through it, and we'll hopefully come out stronger people in the end, right?
Country music star Eric Church with boots on the ground in Banner Elk. Governor Cooper joined the country music star for Helene relief efforts today.
Our Chris Peterson got to check out firsthand how they're making a difference.
Here at this distribution center, folks in need can pick up bottled water, baby needs, and other supplies. And one thing money can't buy: hope. Driving up Highway 184 into Banner Elk, you can see the damage Hurricane Helene has left behind.
It's devastating in a lot of areas, and there's a lot of people that I see the need, and I see the need for a lot of help.
This area is home for country music star Eric Church and was the inspiration for his music.
Creatively, it's been real special to me, but spiritually, it's the place that my soul's at rest. It's the place that I get away from what I do in the world to come here and recharge. So it's the most special place in the world to me.
Church, along with Governor Roy Cooper, toured the old Banner Elk School, now a makeshift disaster relief center. He says this recovery effort will take folks helping out from all over.
The small communities in North Carolina, they're so tight-knit, and you can always rely on them if you're the community next door and you're in trouble. And the unique thing about this situation is there are no communities next door because they're all in trouble. So it's up for everybody else to be that community next door.
Inside the school, classrooms are now filled with camping supplies, heaters, and generators. Volunteers say as soon as supplies come in, they're out the door to those in need. Church says the most powerful thing they have here is hope.
The sense of community here, I know how strong that is because I've been a part of it. And I know that the power is going to come from the people in that community.
And Church is doing his part to help out the folks who live in this community that means so much to him. His Church Cares Foundation is partnering up with Clayton Homes to build 100 homes here in Avery County. In Banner Elk, I'm Chris Peterson, WXII 12 News.
All day we are teaming up with the American Red Cross for Triad Together Helene Relief 12-a-thon. WXII 12's Kenny Beck joins us live from the organization's location in Winston-Salem with the latest.
And Kenny, we're already seeing neighbors helping neighbors. It's a good sight to see.
It sure is, Devontae. Lindsay, good evening to both of you. I'm dating myself maybe a little bit here, but I think of the old Mr. Rogers quote, look for the helpers when something terrible happens. Yes, it's important to focus on what has occurred, but also you will be buoyed by looking for the helpers. And we have so many helpers here. We've received so many phone calls and emails ever since the first raindrops started falling on Friday, asking what can I do to make life just a little bit better for these poor folks in the western part of our state. Many of them are our family members or our children who are at one of the many universities out that way. And you guys have answered the call today already in a remarkable way. But as we've reported, this is going to be a multi-week, likely multi-month project. It could take years before some communities are back to the way they were before Friday. So many great ways to give. QR code is on your screen. You can also do it the old-fashioned way, 855-977-GIVE. I want to bring in Mike DeCinti. He is with the American Red Cross. We just got the right at the top of the hour update, $114,000 raised. Amazing. Just today alone, and about $15,000 in just the last hour. What do you think about that?
It's amazing. And Kenny, I truly want to thank you and your viewing audience. Jackie out here earlier today. You guys put in a long day trying to support those that are going to need the American Red Cross and the support of their neighbors for a long time to come.
I've been with WXII for more than 23 years, and we have partnered with the food bank that entire time. This food drive is larger than any we have ever had, and the tremendous outpouring of love and support coming from you all is just incredible, and we want this to continue. We'll be wrapping up at 6:30 physically here, but as you heard, this need is going to continue. So there's a QR code down at the bottom of the screen, and if you're sitting at home right now, that is your way to donate if you can't make it out here this afternoon, this evening. These are some of the items. This is beyond food. We're talking about cleaning supplies, right? The folks there who have lost everything need that. We're talking about meals that you don't need a can opener for, right? There's beef stew here. We've got peanut butter. We also have fruit, and also think about breakfast time, right? Instead of a box of cereal, this time we're asking you to bring the bowls, and yeah, there's no refrigeration, so we're going to need milk that is actually in cartons. I'll tell you what is happening out here, what you've seen, I should say, is, pictures and images that'll break your heart, but what's happening out here is warming people's hearts and giving them a light and a beacon of hope.
The depths of your generosity are showing no limit. You donated close to $245,000 and more than 33,000 pounds of food, water, and supplies. That was Thursday. On Tuesday, of course, we had our big 12-a-thon with the American Red Cross. Piedmont Triad, between those two events, is sending almost $500,000 to Western North Carolina.
And as some places reopen, many others are just beginning the rebuilding process.
One of the hardest hit areas in Western North Carolina was along Highway 9 between Swannanoa and Chimney Rock.
Chief Meteorologist Lainey Pope visited the region recently and shares one family's story of hope in the wake of heartbreaking loss.
It was scary. It was. We really felt like we had nowhere to go. It was 4 foot deep running down Highway 9.
Tracy Worley has lived along the Broad River since she was 2 years old.
It was a great place to grow up on this river that's always been what drew us to this spot. We loved it.
But they never expected the river to turn and rage like it did on September 27th.
It just kept getting higher and higher and faster, and then the bridge gave, and that was just really scary. And
that's when Tracy and her husband Jimmy moved a few hundred yards down Highway 9 to shelter with their aunt and uncle.
We watched the water just keep coming up, and it started beating into the window, my daughter's window on the end of the house. And it just kept beating against it until it finally just beat it in. And then it washed across her bedroom, and it washed the floor down. And it just, all of her belongings.
It also washed out part of Highway 9 right in front of them. They remained safe just feet from the highway. Thankfully, some fallen trees had diverted the river back into its bed.
We were so cut off from the world. That was probably one of the scariest things when it happened. No cell service. I couldn't call my daughter at school, and we finally got just a little bit of signal at the top of the mountain.
Tracy would tell her daughter away at college that they were okay, but her bedroom and everything in it were gone, including her college softball championship ring.
She was like, "Mom, my ring's gone."
All of her childhood things gone.
She had lots of trophies from cow shows, all her medals, all her belt buckles she would win. All that went down the river. She doesn't have a home to come to. She has family to come to, but as far as a home, they'll probably have to take the house down. My husband went to his knees and cried. This was his mother's house. It used to be a beautiful place. The grass went out to the river. You could sit in the backyard and look at the river. It was just gorgeous. It's very traumatic. It happened. It's real.
The reality is that it could have been far worse.
We did lose, things that were very precious to my daughter, but just to remember the people that have absolutely nothing at this time of year. I mean, they've lost their homes, they've lost their vehicles, some of them have lost family members, and it's just heartbreaking. And it's going to take a long time for this community to rebuild.
I've been in touch with Tracy and her family over the last few weeks, and she told me today they were without power for 18 days. Wow. They've got power back. They have water. They are currently in a rental in Black Mountain, and they're going to build a garage apartment, and then they hope to rebuild the home, but they're going to build it on another piece of property because she said her husband just doesn't want to go back.
And after
to the river.
seeing that,
That's so
seeing the water, seeing that bridge give way, it's traumatizing.
Yeah. As the weather gets colder, displaced residents all across western North Carolina are struggling to find places to stay warm. Many people had their homes washed away by Helene and have had to resort to living out of RVs, campers, and tents. We spoke to a community of people with eye-opening stories about the impacts of the storm. As the sun starts to set over Swannanoa.
It gets real cold after dark, though.
Flames from this fire are fuming.
I have nowhere else to go.
Warming the faces and the hearts of those with stories of survival.
I knew it was time to go.
That need to be told.
The first sight that I got to see of my home, I looked over here and it was a river running all the way through here, all the way across. Past where we're standing.
The day Helene tore through this town.
Total shock.
Lives were changed forever.
And I don't know, I think we're all probably still in shock because this is not what my home looked like at all.
It took only seconds for waters to wash away what residents like Dara Cody
well, it looks pretty bleak, doesn't it?
had spent a lifetime building.
And thought we were going to come back and clean up mud. We had no idea the devastation. We had no idea that any of this had happened.
Believe it or not,
there was no sign of my home at all.
Her home,
no sign of it at all.
Was here.
Right here.
She left to seek shelter and came back to this.
I've lived here my whole life. And it doesn't look like my town at all.
Her entire livelihood had been ripped away by fierce winds and rushing waters, now reduced to rubble.
Oh, it's gone.
RVs, tents, and campers now line the landscape where houses used to sit.
Yeah, it's pretty rough living. It's like going camping, but except you're having to. Like, you're not doing it just for fun.
A community of sorts has formed here.
We all got the same problem, rebuilding our town that we're from. And if you care about being here and you care about being from here and you love this place, like, you got to just do something, about the current state that it's in.
We're still living like this, and this is not a fun way to live.
Her once so familiar town now seems almost foreign.
It's tourists coming through, and then a lot of it's help coming through. But a lot of people are just driving through to take pictures and videos,
But in these times of grief, it's those glimpses of gratitude,
a lot of prayers,
that help keep this community going.
The outpouring of love and kindness and generosity, compassion, love for your fellow man, it's been something.
These are real stories, real people.
We matter too.
Western North Carolina is still suffering, still needing assistance.
We matter too, and we're still living in this situation.
So as the sun starts to set over Swannanoa, the temperature's dropping, remember the faces of those with a long road to recovery ahead, still fighting, still hoping for a house to call home once again.
We appreciate every single thing that's come so far. Just hope that it doesn't stop coming all at once, because then what would we do?
So there are a lot of people like Dara out in western North Carolina, and FEMA was actually paying for her to stay in a hotel, but those funds ran out, which means she's back in the RV where her home once was, and it completely washed away.
And as they do with most tropical systems, meteorologists spent days tracking Helene as it moved closer to land, and the closer it got, it became evident this would bring major flooding to western North Carolina.
Chief Meteorologist Lainey Pope spoke with the National Weather Service and explains how Helene became so destructive in our state.
Well, I knew when a wall of water rose 3 feet in 10 minutes, it's time to go.
Michael Herron lives in the Black Mountains near Swannanoa. He had heard of the Great North Carolina floods of 1916 and 1940, and this one was now worse.
This is the worst event in the modern era for our office.
Meteorologist Tricia Palmer worked the storm.
We broke all-time records on our stream gauges in the western North Carolina mountains.
The other 6 floods that have happened have come to the bottom of my foundation, never in the house.
It was then that Michael had to spring into action to protect his family.
So I left them on the porch around the back of the house, cut my boat loose, pulled up to the porch. They got on, and so this was 4 and 5 feet deep.
He was able to steer the boat through swift-moving water to a nearby higher parking lot. He considers himself lucky.
There's a mobile home park, not far from here, probably 100 mobile homes. Those people lost everything they had.
Helene destroyed most of Swannanoa. And the town of Chimney Rock was completely washed away.
We know that water can move boulders. Houses and cars are just simply no match for that kind of power.
20 to 30 inches of rain fell over the Black Mountains with Helene, including the 3 to 4 days prior. The eastern continental divide lies near Swannanoa and Chimney Rock. It splits the water flow from east into the Atlantic Ocean via the Broad River through the Hickory Nut Gorge, where Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, and Highway 9 lie. And to the west, the water flows to the Gulf of Mexico via the Swannanoa River, where Michael lives, and on to the French Broad River through Asheville.
I mean, water travels downhill, so we're just in a bowl.
All of the rain from the top of Mount Mitchell at over 6,000 feet rushed off the mountains into the low-lying gorge towns, which had already received more than a foot of rain themselves.
Water weighs 62.4 pounds per cubic foot, and it typically flows downstream at 6 to 12 miles per hour. Basically, all of this volume of water is being channeled into a very narrow area with very steep slopes, and there's nowhere for the water to go but up.
Tricia tells me this scenario played out in several mountain towns like Asheville and Lake Lure, where record flood levels occurred that day.
This was huge. I mean, this is all across the North Carolina mountains. This really is a once-in-a-lifetime event.
What if it happened again in 8 years? I don't know. I don't know if it'll come back. I don't know.
Yeah, he says he doesn't know if they're going to live there still.
I'm sure he's not the only one either.
I was going to say 7 floods. So they're used to flooding in the mountains, but this one, of course, of just historical proportions and just there's no match
and
for
the rain
water.
Beforehand, too, the 3 to 4 days prior.
Yeah, so it was kind of a 1-2 punch.